I still remember that morning like it was pressed into my skin. The air in Bristol felt cold but clean, and the streets near King Street looked shiny from a light rain that had already passed. I opened my cafe early, the same way I always did, because routine keeps me steady when my thoughts start racing. The espresso machine hissed, the cups warmed under my hands, and the smell of baked cinnamon rolls filled the room. My little cafe wasn't fancy, but it was mine. The wood tables had small scratches from years of work, and the front window always fogged up when the coffee was fresh. I kept telling myself that in 24 hours I would be a married woman, and life would look different. When I finally took a break, I went back to my small brick house just a few streets away. It was quiet inside, the kind of quiet that makes you hear every tiny sound. My wedding dress hung from the bedroom door like a secret. The white fabric looked softer than anything else in my life, and for a moment I just stood there staring at it, thinking about how many hours I had spent saving for it. I had paid £1,250 for that dress, which was a lot for me, and I remembered the guilt I felt as I handed my card over at the shop. But when I tried it on, even I had to admit it looked like a dream. On my dresser were hairpins, a small perfume bottle, and a folded note from my Auntie Marianne that said, "Walk into tomorrow with your head high." My best friend Maya came over around noon, carrying a bag of last-minute things like safety pins, tissues, and a tiny sewing kit she swore could fix anything. She moved through my house like she lived there, opening drawers and making small lists out loud. Maya always made jokes when she could tell I was nervous. She leaned on the kitchen counter, looked me up and down, and said, "Promise me you won't trip tomorrow. I can deal with tears, but I can't deal with blood." I laughed and told her I never tripped, like I had some special talent for walking that other people didn't have. She rolled her eyes, smiled, and said, "Famous last words." After she left, I went back to the cafe to check the evening prep. The place was busy with regulars wishing me luck and asking if I was excited. I smiled until my cheeks hurt. A sweet older man named Peter pressed a 20-pound tip into my hand and said, "For your new life, love." I tried to give it back, but he refused, and I ended up tucking it into the jar near the register. Everyone had opinions about weddings, about husbands, about how quickly the years pass. I nodded through it all, but inside, my mind kept drifting to Graham. He was charming, careful with his words, and the kind of man people described as comfortable. He wore good suits and had friends who talked about investments and weekend trips, and part of me felt like I was stepping into a world I didn't fully understand. That evening, as the sky turned dark and the streetlights came on, I locked up the cafe and carried a box of wedding favors toward home. I was tired, and my feet already ached from standing all day, but I felt proud too. The box wasn't heavy, just awkward in my arms, and I remember thinking that tomorrow I would be holding something much heavier. Promises, expectations, a whole new name if I chose to take it. I crossed near the old stone bridge, where cars sometimes turn too fast, and I heard tires on wet road. A vehicle swung around the corner sharper than it should have. Instinct made me step back quickly, and my heel clipped the curb. Everything happened in a fast blur. My balance snapped, my body went down, and the box flew out of my arms like it had its own plans. My knee hit first, then my side, and then there was that sound, an ugly crack that didn't belong to the street. Pain rushed through my leg, so sharp it made my stomach turn. I tried to sit up, but my body refused, and my breath came out in short, scared pulls. Someone shouted, someone else ran toward me, and I saw faces leaning over, blurry with worry. I wanted to say, "I'm fine," because I always say that, even when I'm not. But the truth was louder than my pride. An ambulance arrived with flashing lights that painted the buildings red and blue. A paramedic named James spoke to me in a calm voice, asking my name, asking where it hurt, telling me to stay still. He cut my trouser leg carefully, and the cold air hit my skin. When he touched my ankle, I cried out, and that was when I knew it wasn't a small injury. As they lifted me onto the stretcher, I stared up at the dark Bristol sky and felt my heart twist with fear. The last clear thought I had before the doors closed was simple and heavy. My wedding was in 24 hours, and I didn't know how to stand in it anymore. I woke up under bright hospital lights that made everything look too clean and too honest. The room smelled like soap, plastic, and something sharp that reminded me of cold metal. My leg was wrapped and raised, and even the small movement of my toes sent pain up my body like a warning. A nurse named Callum came in with a gentle face and a soft voice, like he had learned how to speak to people on the worst days of their lives. "Try not to move too much," he said, checking the monitor beside my bed. "The doctor will be back soon. You're safe here." I nodded, but my mind was not safe. It was running circles around one thought. The wedding was tomorrow. A little later, Dr. Eleanor Price returned and showed me the x-ray. I didn't even need her to point at it. The break looked like a crooked line drawn with anger. "It's a clean fracture," she said. "That's good in a strange way. We'll put on a full cast. You'll need crutches and you'll need time." I swallowed hard and asked the question that felt like lifting a stone with my throat. "Can I still get married?" She paused, then nodded slowly. "You can, if you're careful and you accept that it won't look like the plan. But the marriage is not in the walking. It's in the choice." Her words were kind, but they didn't stop the panic in my chest. When she left, the room went quiet again, except for the steady beep that reminded me I was still here. Night came, and it came heavy. I stared at my phone like it might solve everything. My house in Bristol suddenly felt far away, like it belonged to another version of me. The one who could stand up, the one who could wear heels, the one who didn't have a cast and a rising bill in her head. I knew hospital care wasn't free in every place, and my brain started adding numbers even when I told it to stop. I had savings from the cafe, and I could handle it if I had to, but I hated surprises. In my notes app, without even thinking, I typed a rough list. £280 for the dress fitting, £500 for the flowers, £1,250 for the dress, and now who knew what for this accident. My hands shook as I held the phone, and I felt angry at my own body for breaking at the worst time. Then my screen lit up with a message from my Auntie Marianne. She always texts like she's speaking in real life, warm and casual, like she's sitting right beside you. Her words made my chest tighten. "Auntie, how was your night? You looked so beautiful in your wedding dress yesterday." For a second I thought she was confused about the day, like she had mixed up times. But then I realized she had probably seen one of the photos Maya took during my final dress try-on and assumed I was already sleeping happily before the big day. I stared at her message and felt tears come fast, not polite tears, but the kind that make your nose burn. I typed back, simple and plain, because I didn't trust myself with more. "Me. I'm in the hospital." The second I hit send, my phone started ringing. The name on the screen made my heart drop in a different way. Bianca, my sister. The kind of person who walks into a room and checks who has more power before she checks who is hurt. I answered, and she didn't even say hello properly. "So," she said, like she was starting a business call, "I'm going to New Zealand with your rich fiancé." I blinked, sure I had misheard. She kept going, fast and proud. "He booked tickets. You always act like your little cafe is something special, but it's nothing. You'll stay stuck making coffee for strangers, and I'll be living a real life. Now I'm rich, and you can keep running your useless place." I could hear her smiling through the phone, like she expected me to beg her to stop. I sat there with my broken leg, the hospital blanket pulled up to my waist, and something inside me snapped loose. Not my bones this time, but my patience. I started laughing out loud. It surprised even me. The sound filled the room, and Callum peeked in, checking if I was okay. Bianca went silent for a moment, then hissed, "What is wrong with you?" I wiped my eyes, still smiling, and said softly, "Oh, my sister, what did you do?" She snapped back, "Don't talk to me like I'm stupid." "I'm not," I said. "I'm just shocked." Because Graham has no idea what you're doing. My voice got calmer, clearer. And he has no idea that you don't know the truth. Bianca's breathing changed, sharp like she had stepped on something. I let the next words land slowly. In fact, my fiancé lost everything. He's in debt. He has nothing. There was a long pause, the kind that feels like standing on the edge of a roof. Then Bianca said, smaller and rougher. That's a lie. I leaned back on the pillow, staring at the ceiling tiles. It's not, I said. He told me last night in my kitchen at my house. He said he owes £82,000. He said his accounts are empty. I took a breath and added almost kindly, so, if you're flying anywhere with him, Bianca, you might want to bring your own money. And that's when her silence turned cold. She didn't apologize. She didn't ask if I was okay. She just hung up, like the call had burned her hand. I stared at my phone after it went dark, and I felt a strange peace under the pain. My leg was broken, my wedding was a day away, and my sister had just shown me exactly who she was. But I also knew something else now, something steady. If Bianca was chasing a dream made of pounds and pride, she was about to wake up very fast. Morning came into my hospital room in a thin, pale line, as if the sun itself was nervous about showing up. I barely slept. Every time I drifted off, I woke again with the same thought pressing into my chest. Today was supposed to be my wedding day. My leg sat in its heavy cast like a punishment I didn't ask for, and the pain pulsed in waves, sharp 1 minute and dull the next. A nurse brought me tea that tasted too weak, and I drank it anyway because I needed something warm to hold. When I checked my phone, I saw missed calls from my Auntie Marianne, Maya, and Graham. My hands trembled as I tried to decide which fear to answer first. Maya arrived before anyone else, rushing in with cheeks pink from the cold and eyes already wet. She carried a garment bag, and I knew immediately what was inside. "Don't yell at me," she said, "but I brought your dress." I stared at her. "Maya, you can't bring a wedding dress to a hospital." She pointed around the room like she was proving a simple fact. "Why not? It's just a building. And today is still your day if you want it." She unzipped the bag and lifted the dress carefully, and the white fabric looked almost unreal against the plain hospital walls. For a moment, my throat closed, and I had to blink hard to keep myself from crying again. Then my Auntie Marian swept in like a storm wrapped in a coat. She kissed my forehead, held my face in her hands, and said, "My girl, don't you dare break your heart just because you broke your leg." She was the kind of woman who could turn a small room into a safe place just by standing in it. She looked at the cast, frowned at it like it had personally insulted her, and asked the nurse for extra pillows, extra blankets, anything to make me more comfortable. When she saw the dress, she didn't gasp or panic. She simply nodded once and said, "Good. We do it here." I didn't even know if that was possible, but Marian never cared much about possible. She started making calls with the calm authority of someone planning a holiday dinner. Maya texted the officiant. A cousin offered to bring flowers. Someone else offered a small speaker. Even Nurse Callum, who had been gentle and quiet the night before, smiled and said, "We can move the chair and make space." I've seen people do braver things than this. The room slowly changed. It wasn't a ballroom, but it became something softer. The harsh light was dimmed. The bed was made neat. A simple white sheet was hung behind me like a plain backdrop. For the first time since the accident, the air felt less like fear and more like a plan. When Graham finally walked in, he looked like he had run through every bad thought in the world and lost to all of them. His hair was slightly messy, and his eyes were red, like he had been awake all night arguing with himself. He stopped at the door, staring at my cast, and the guilt on his face made me angry, not at him, but at the world. "I'm sorry," he whispered. "I'm sorry your day got ruined." I lifted my chin and said, "My day isn't ruined. My leg is. There's a difference." He let out a breath that sounded like it had been trapped inside him for hours. He came closer and reached for my hand like he was afraid I might pull away. Then he said, "I heard from someone that Bianca called you." I raised an eyebrow. "Oh," she called. "She says she's going to New Zealand with you." His face went blank. "What?" The confusion was so real it almost made me laugh again. "I didn't invite her," he said quickly. "I didn't book anything. I swear I didn't." I watched his eyes, listened to his voice, and I believed him. "She thinks you're rich," I said. He looked away, ashamed. "I'm not," he murmured. "Not anymore." I squeezed his hand gently. "I know," I said. That's why I laughed. She ran after a story she made up. The officiant arrived in the early afternoon, a warm woman named Harriet Collins who spoke like she understood that love doesn't need perfect timing. Marian fixed my hair with slow, careful hands, and Maya helped me slide into my dress without moving my leg too much. It didn't fall the same way it had during the fitting, and the cast showed clearly beneath the hem, but in the mirror, I still looked like a bride. Not the kind from magazines, but the kind from real life. I sat upright in bed, shoulders back, breathing through the nerves, and I told myself I would not let pain steal what mattered. When Harriet asked if I was ready, I looked at Graham and saw something I hadn't seen before. No performance, no shiny confidence, just a man standing there honest and exposed. His suit was simple, his tie slightly crooked. His hand shook when he held mine. Harriet spoke, and the words were plain and steady. When it was time for the vows, Graham's voice cracked, but he didn't stop. "I promise," he said, "to tell you the truth even when it scares me, and to stand with you even when I can't give you what I thought I should." Tears rolled down my cheeks, and I didn't wipe them away. I didn't want to pretend I was stronger than I felt. When I said, "I do," my voice came out clear. It surprised me. It felt like I was choosing something real, not something polished. Marian cried loudly. Maya laughed and cried at the same time, and Callum clapped softly near the door. Harriet announced us as husband and wife, and the room filled with a quiet joy that didn't need music or a dance floor. Graham leaned in, kissed my forehead, and whispered, "Thank you for staying." I smiled through the ache in my leg and said, "I didn't marry your money, Graham. I married you." Outside our room, the hospital kept moving like nothing special had happened. But inside, in that small space with white walls and a borrowed speaker, my life still turned into a new chapter. It just did it sitting down. 2 days after my hospital wedding, I came back to my little brick house in Bristol, England, with crutches under my arms and a cast that felt like a heavy boot. The living room looked the same, worn sofa, kettle on the counter, receipts on the table, but I felt changed. Auntie Marian stayed with me, making soup and saying, "Pain is loud, but it doesn't get to be the boss." Graham came every evening with plain truth. He told me which calls he made, which jobs he applied for, and what he owed. The number still made my stomach drop. £82,000. But he didn't hide it. He said, "I'm scared." And I said, "So am I." We planned how to keep my cafe running while I healed. On the third morning, my phone buzzed. "Open the door," the message said. I didn't need a name to know it was Bianca. I swung myself to the hallway and opened the door with my shoulder. She stood there with a suitcase and a face that was trying not to look embarrassed. She didn't ask about my leg. "Graham humiliated me," she said. I held the door frame for balance. "What happened?" I asked. "We went to London."
"Heathrow," she snapped.
He acted fine until the counter. Then his card declined. Then another one declined. People stared at me. She pushed her hair back and added, "I paid £45 for snacks because he didn't even have enough for coffee." Then he told me he owes money. "He said you knew." "I did know," I said quietly. Bianca blinked, and her voice turned thin. "And you still married him?" "Yes," I said, "because I'm not marrying a wallet. I'm marrying a person." She looked past me into my house, scanning like she expected a secret safe. "So you're going to pay his debt?" she asked. "I'm going to help him make a plan," I said. "He's applying for work and we'll live smaller for a while. We'll be honest." I took a breath. "And my cafe isn't useless." Bianca gave a small, cruel laugh. "That cafe will never save you." "It already has," I replied. A local investor, Daniel Rowe, offered $60,000 to help me expand. I said yes, but only if I stay in control. Her eyes widened. "So you're rich," she whispered. I shook my head.
No.
"I'm stable. I worked for it." Bianca's shoulders dropped. "I spent 1,200 pounds on clothes for New Zealand," she muttered, staring at her suitcase. "I'm sorry," I said, "but you chose to run after Story." She swallowed. "So what do I do now?" Auntie Mary Ann appeared behind me, arms folded. I kept my voice calm. "You can apologize," I said. "You can stop competing with me. If you want work, you can start at the cafe. I can pay £12 an hour." Bianca nodded once, stiff and small, then rolled her suitcase back to the taxi. After she left, I called my manager at the cafe, Rosa, and asked how the morning went. She said the regulars were asking about me, and she promised to keep the place steady. Hearing her voice, I remembered. I wasn't alone, even on crutches, in this new life. That night, Graham sat beside me on the sofa and took my hand. "I'm sorry," he whispered. "About your sister." I squeezed his fingers. "My leg broke," I said. "My plans broke." But the truth didn't. I looked around my small house, heard the kettle click, and felt something settle inside me. A perfect wedding is nice, but a real marriage is better.